I knew the moment Drake Salvat called me into his office that something in my world was about to shift. I had spent almost 2 years working as his maid, moving quietly through his penthouse, keeping my head down, learning how to blend into the background. That was the safest place to be near a man like him. A man who ruled an entire city with fear, wealth, and a voice so calm it made your heart beat faster for reasons you didn't want to admit. But that day felt different. His eyes stayed on me a moment too long, as if he was seeing me for the first time. I tried to steady my breathing as I stood beside 3 other women who had every reason to be there, unlike me. Clarissa, the socialite who was born for luxury. Veronica, the lawyer who controlled half of Drake's legitimate empire. Jasmine, his ex-lover whose beauty was as sharp as a blade. And then, there was me. Maria, the maid who scrubbed floors and folded sheets and tried to stay out of trouble. Drake leaned back in his chair, the city lights behind him painting his face in gold and shadow. Even after all this time working for him, his presence still made my stomach tighten. He had the kind of power that pulled the air out of a room. "Each of you will take one," he said, sliding a black velvet box forward. Inside were 4 identical black credit cards. Unlimited cards. No limit. No rules. No explanation. I froze. I had never even held a card like that in my life. I cleaned around wealth every day, but it never belonged to me. It never even touched me. Drake's eyes moved from woman to woman, studying each expression like he was reading a secret message. "You have 1 month," he said. "Use the card however you wish." When his eyes reached me, something in his gaze tightened. I wasn't sure if it was curiosity, confusion, or something I didn't have a name for yet. I lowered my eyes quickly, trying to break whatever strange pull kept forming between us. We were dismissed, and the moment I stepped out of his office, my heart raced in a confusing mix of fear and disbelief. Clarissa was buzzing with excitement before the doors even closed. Veronica already looked like she was planning 10 steps ahead. Jasmine muttered something under her breath that made the guards look nervous. I simply walked away, the card heavy in my pocket like it was burning through the fabric. I didn't spend a single dollar that night. I couldn't. That kind of money wasn't for people like me. It felt wrong in my hands. I took the bus home like always, holding my small bag close, feeling the corners of the card poking against my fingers. When I climbed into bed beside my sleeping parents, I whispered a quiet promise to myself. I will use this card only to help someone who needs it more than I do. The next morning, while Clarissa posted photos on social media from a private jet and Veronica met investors for her new ventures, I walked to a small hot dog stand in a struggling neighborhood on the south side of town. I bought 200 hot dogs and handed them out beneath a bridge to families who slept on cardboard scraps under the cold concrete. Their thank yous warmed me more than any luxury ever could. I thought that would be the end of it. A good deed. One moment of relief. But when I returned to work the next day, Drake's eyes lingered on me again, not in the way powerful men look at women. No, his gaze was searching, puzzled, almost cautious. He knew. Of course he knew. He had ways of watching everything. He didn't say a word about it. He only gave me a nod before returning to his papers. But something in that nod made my pulse race. It felt like he had discovered a part of me I tried to keep hidden. Over the next week, I spent the card only when someone needed help. Quiet purchases. Small acts. No attention. No reward. But every time I entered Drake's penthouse, I felt his gaze, even when I wasn't looking. It followed me when I dusted the bookshelves, when I folded his shirts, when I refilled the crystal decanter on his desk. He was watching me more closely than any of the others. One evening, as I wiped down the kitchen counters, I felt him standing behind me. My breath caught in my throat. He rarely approached me directly, and never like this. "Maria," he said, his voice low and steady. "You've hardly used the card." I turned slowly, meeting his eyes, even though it made my heart thump painfully in my chest. "I've used it," I said softly, "just not on myself." A flicker of something unreadable passed over his face. "Why?" he asked. I swallowed hard. He was the last person I wanted to explain myself to. He belonged to a world where kindness was a weakness and money was a weapon. But the truth came out anyway. Because I already have enough. Silence stretched between us like a held breath. For the first time since I'd met Drake Salvat, his expression cracked. Not much, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel it. Like I had shaken something inside him he had built his entire empire to protect. I didn't know it then, but that moment changed everything. He had given 4 women unlimited wealth to test their character. Only one card was about to test his. Drake Salvat was not a man who showed emotion. I had worked around him long enough to learn that his face stayed still, even when the whole world shifted under his feet. But ever since I told him I had enough, something in him had changed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quieter, heavier, like a door inside him had opened a crack without his permission. And somehow, I had been the one to open it. I didn't intend to get tangled in the experiment. I only wanted to keep my job, keep my head down, and help people the way my father taught me. But the moment I learned Drake was watching every transaction, every choice, every step I made with that card, my world tightened around me. He wasn't just watching. He was studying me. Every day when I came to clean the penthouse, I could feel his presence even when I couldn't see him. His gaze followed me from the shadows of the living room or from behind the glass walls of his office. He never spoke about the card again, but the silence between us felt charged, like something unspoken was slowly growing roots. Meanwhile, the other 3 women were spiraling in ways Drake had predicted. Clarissa spent money like the world owed her every diamond it ever produced. Veronica was building an empire so clean and calculated it felt colder than Drake's own. And Jasmine was fire, burning everything she touched, especially anything connected to Drake. The city was changing, and so was he. One evening I finished my chores early and walked toward the exit when Drake's voice stopped me. "Maria, wait." My feet froze. He never called my name like that. Not with that tone. Not like he needed something from me rather than commanding it. He stepped out from behind his desk, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. The city lights behind him made him look carved from shadow and gold. "Sit," he said. I hesitated for a second before lowering myself into the chair opposite him. My heart felt too loud in my chest. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. My security team reviewed the first full week of spending. Clarissa bought jewelry and parties. Veronica built companies. Jasmine bought information. He paused, then looked directly at me. "And you bought meals for strangers." I felt my cheeks warm. They needed it. Quote. He leaned forward slightly. Most people would use that card on themselves first. I shook my head. Most people don't come from where I come from. He didn't speak, but something in his jaw shifted, like he understood that more than I expected. "What about your family?" he asked. "Your parents? Your life outside this building?" I hesitated. Drake Salvat was the last person who should know anything personal about me. But something about his voice made it impossible to lie. "My parents are older," I said softly. "They've worked hard their whole lives. Too hard. I want to buy them a house one day. Something stable, something safe." His eyes sharpened at that. "And you used the card?" "For a down payment on a small home," I admitted. "Nothing extravagant. Just something they deserve." For a long moment, he didn't react. Then he stood, walked to the window, and placed his hand on the glass, as if the city below held answers he couldn't reach. "You're not like them," he said quietly. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed silent. He turned back to me. "Do you know why I gave those cards out?" Quote. I shook my head. "Power," he said. "I wanted to see who could handle it, who would crumble under it, who would rise above it." "And what have you learned?" I asked softly. His eyes locked with mine, and for the first time, they didn't feel cold. "That power doesn't change people," he said. "It reveals them." My breath caught. His gaze lingered on me as if searching for something he hadn't realized he needed. I stood slowly. "I should get back to work." He didn't stop me, but as I reached the door, he spoke again. "Maria, I turned. For what it's worth, the things you're doing with that card. He exhaled, almost like the confession pained him. I haven't seen anything like it in my entire life. Those words lived inside me for days. But the world around Drake was falling apart, and it was happening fast. Rumors were spreading about Jasmine's alliances. Whispers floated through the penthouse staff about federal agents watching his operations. The tension in the halls grew thicker every day. One afternoon, while I was vacuuming the upstairs hallway, Drake's security chief approached him with a tablet. Their voices dropped low, but they didn't know I could hear. "Boss, the others," the chief said. "It's getting worse. Clarissa's making enemies. Veronica's meeting with agents. Jasmine is planning something big." "And Maria?" Drake asked quietly. "She's the anomaly," the chief answered. "Everything she buys is for someone else. She's creating a ripple in the community bigger than we expected." There was a pause. Then Drake said something I never forget. "She's the only one I can't predict." My hands trembled around the vacuum handle. Because in that moment I realized the truth. This test wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. And Drake Salvat, the man who trusted no one, feared nothing, and controlled everything, was beginning to fall in a way he never intended. Toward me. I didn't understand how everything changed so fast. One moment, I was just a maid trying to stay invisible. The next, the entire city seemed to be collapsing around Drake Salvat, and somehow I had become the only steady thing in his life. It felt unreal, almost frightening, how often his eyes searched for me now, not with suspicion, not with control, with something deeper, heavier, something he didn't know how to name, something I didn't know how to handle. But while his attention shifted toward me, the world around him turned darker. Jasmine's revenge grew sharper each day. Veronica's ambition tightened like a noose. Clarissa's chaos spread across social circles that were ready to eat her alive. And Drake's empire was beginning to crack. The night everything tipped, I was dusting the shelves in his living room when I heard a door slam and heavy steps rushing down the hallway. "Boss," his security chief said, breathless. "We just got hit. 2 warehouses seized. Agents are moving. Rivals are coordinating with Jasmine." I froze. Drake stood still for a long moment as if the news rolled over him instead of hitting him. Then he spoke in a low voice. "Keep eyes on all of them, especially Jasmine." He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He just tightened, like steel heating into shape. But when he turned and saw me in the doorway, something inside him softened for the first time that day. "You should go home early," he said quietly. I didn't move. "Are you all right?" For a second I wished I hadn't asked. It was too personal, too bold, too intimate. But he surprised me. "No," he admitted. "But you don't need to worry about that." He turned away like he was afraid of what I would see if he let me look too long. The next morning, everything was worse. Agents raided 2 more businesses. News outlets broke stories exposing corruption. 3 of his lieutenants defected. And Jasmine's name was whispered everywhere. When I arrived at the penthouse, Drake didn't greet me with commands or distance. He greeted me with silence. A tired, heavy silence. He sat at the kitchen island, elbows on the counter, staring at a black mug of untouched coffee. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his forearms, exposing veins tight with stress. His hair was slightly messy, like he had dragged his hands through it all night. I had never seen him like that, not even close. "Good morning," I said softly. He didn't lift his head right away. When he finally did, the look in his eyes stunned me. It wasn't his usual control. It was exhaustion. And something like trust. "Maria," he said, "sit with me." I hesitated, then took the seat beside him. "You know everything that's happening," he said. "I won't pretend you don't." "I do," I whispered, "but you're stronger than this." For a moment he closed his eyes like those words hit him harder than anything else that day. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "A big one." "What mistake?" He didn't look away this time. I had tested the wrong people. My breath caught in my throat. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Clarissa only cared about revenge. Veronica tried to replace me. Jasmine wants to destroy me." His eyes softened. "And then there's you." My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. "You used that card to help strangers," he said. "You worked extra shifts so you could buy your parents a simple locket, even though you had unlimited money. You never once used the card for yourself." I looked down at my hands. I didn't want anything for myself. "I know," he said. That's what shocked me. The room felt warm and quiet, like the whole city outside had paused just to listen. Then his security chief barged in. "Boss, you need to see this." We both stood and followed him to the surveillance screens. Jasmine appeared on one of the feeds, entering a secret meeting with 3 of Drake's enemies and a federal agent who had been investigating his businesses for years. She wasn't just trying to hurt him, she was trying to destroy him completely. "Sir," the chief said, "we also discovered she tried to recruit Maria yesterday. Promised her protection, money, power." Drake's whole body tensed. "And?" he asked. "She refused." Drake turned to me slowly. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a kind of storm I had never seen before. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. The answer sat in my throat, simple but dangerous. "Because I didn't think it mattered." "It mattered to me," he said softly. My breath caught. But before anything else could be spoken, alarms blared across the building. "FBI breach on the lower floors!" someone yelled through the comms. Drake moved instantly into command mode. "Lock down the penthouse," he ordered. "Move Maria to the safe room." But I grabbed his arm. "No!" He stopped, shocked. No one told him no. "I'm not hiding," I said. "Not when you're standing out here alone." His jaw tightened, but not in anger, more like fear. "Fear for me, Maria," he said quietly. "They're coming for anyone connected to me. That includes you. I don't care." He stared at me like he had never seen me before. And maybe he hadn't. In the chaos of alarms and shouting, something passed between us. Something that finally made sense of every look, every silence, every moment that had grown between us since the day he handed out those cards. He trusted me. And maybe, without meaning to, I trusted him too. The walls shook as agents moved closer. Drake turned to me again. "Stay behind me," he said, and for the first time since I met him, I didn't see a Mafia boss. I saw a man trying to protect me. The alarms grew louder as footsteps shook the floors beneath us. Drake stood in front of me like a barrier carved from stone. I had seen him command businesses, criminals, entire streets, but I had never seen him like this. Protective, focused, human. His security team rushed to seal the room, but the agents were moving too fast. The building was swarming. Drake's empire was falling floor by floor, and he wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't even preparing to fight. He looked ready, ready for consequences he once believed he could outrun. "Maria," he said quietly, "I need you to listen carefully." I shook my head. "No, I'm not leaving you." "You have to." His voice dropped lower. "They think you're involved. They'll take you down with me." "But I didn't do anything wrong." "That doesn't matter to them." His eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd known him, they held something almost painful. "I won't let your life burn because of mine." His security chief rushed back in. "They're one floor away. We need to move." But instead of running, Drake walked straight to the safe he kept hidden behind a panel on the wall. He pulled out a small black device and pressed it into my hands. "These are access codes," he said, "to accounts the government can't trace. Enough money to keep your community centers running for decades." I tried to push it back to him. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it," he said. "I'm giving it back. Everything I built came from hurting people. The least I can do is make sure some good comes from it before it all disappears." My voice shook. "It's blood money." "I know," he said, "and that's why you should be the one to use it. You're the only one who won't waste it on power." The door rattled as agents attempted to override the lock. "Sir, we need to go," the chief shouted. But Drake ignored him. He reached into the safe again and pulled out a thick folder, placing it in my hands with surprising gentleness. "This is your father's case," he said. "Everything that was taken from him, everything that can clear his name. I froze. My father? Drake nodded slowly. I'm the reason he went to prison. I was young. I was hungry for power. I betrayed the only man who ever tried to teach me a better path. His confession hit me harder than the alarms. You knew, I whispered. You knew who I was this whole time. No, he said. I didn't know until the investigation dug into your background. But when I did know, everything made sense. Your strength, your kindness, your choices. The door shuttered again. 5 seconds, the chief warned. I stared at Drake, trembling. If you knew who I was, why let me stay? Quote. His answer was quiet. Because you're the only person who reminded me that I could still be better. The lock finally gave way. Agents burst through the door with weapons drawn. Drake raised his hands calmly. No fear, no anger, just acceptance. I stepped forward instinctively, but he stopped me with the softest touch to my arm. Maria, he whispered, don't forget what you taught me. My throat tightened. What did I teach you? He gave me a faint, tired smile. That real wealth isn't what you take, it's what you give. They pulled him away before I could speak again. I watched as they handcuffed him, pushed him through the hallway, and disappeared behind armored doors. For the first time, Drake Salvat didn't look like a king or a criminal. He looked free, even in chains. 6 months later, I walked through the bright halls of the newest community center, the 4th one we had opened since the raid. Children played in the courtyard. Volunteers stocked shelves. Families found help they never thought they'd receive, all built from restitution, from regret, from a man trying to rewrite the ending of his story. When I reached the federal detention center, the guards nodded, already familiar with my monthly visits. Drake sat across from me in a simple beige uniform. He looked different, his face calmer, his eyes clearer, like prison had stripped everything except the truth from him. How's the center? He asked. Full, I replied with a smile. We hired 20 more staff, and my father wants to visit you. His expression softened with disbelief. After everything I did to him? He says everyone deserves a chance to make things right. Drake let out a breath that sounded like a man releasing 20 years of guilt. What about you? He asked quietly. Do you believe that too? Quote. I looked at him for a long moment. Yes, I said. I think everyone deserves a second chance if they choose it. His voice dropped. Maria, if you had known from the beginning that this was a test, would you have done anything differently? I shook my head. No, because the money never mattered. What mattered was what it revealed about the people who used it. Drake held my gaze. And what did it reveal about me? That you spent your whole life chasing the wrong kind of power, I said softly. But you found the right kind at the end. He swallowed hard. And you? I smiled gently. That I had more than enough all along. The guards called time. As I stood to leave, Drake spoke one last time. Maria. I turned. He looked at me like a man finally learning how to feel without fear. Thank you for showing me who I could have been. I nodded, heart full and aching. Who you still can be. The door closed between us, but for the first time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of a different life. For both of us.